Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I am here with a new topic, that is good documentation practices. I hope you people are enjoying my previous lectures where we discussed about the principles of GMP. We also discussed about the quality management system under GMP in the last few classes. So moving on to the next part, that is the good documentation practices. So first we will see what are the learning objectives for today's class. So today we will be discussing about the different categories and general requirements of documents. Then we will be seeing the specific requirement of each of the document, and then we need to also see which are the do's and do nots in the data entry and recording of a good documentation practices. So myself Srijesh, your instructor for GMP. So once again, welcome back. Stay tuned and enjoy the lecture. Sometimes the videos may be a little lengthier, so please excuse. So it is a general proverb according to the documentation which we discussed. If it is not documented, it is not happen. Is it? If it is not documented, it is not happen is a proverb and is a thumb rule in the case of good documentation. So documentation control is not optional. It is a legal requirement. So if you are saying that you are following the good manufacturing practices and you want to assure the quality of your product, then documentation is one of the essentiality in for production facility. So reports and records with the procedures will tell you the story of manufactured products and devices. So when you have a proper record, when you have the proper reports through which we can identify the story of product, how it is being manufactured, what kind of quality testing it has been undergone and reached into the market. So as I mentioned, GDP is a key component of GMP compliance. Mainly when the regulatory inspectors come and visit the facility, they will be focusing more time, they will be spending more time on verifying the document than just seeing the facilitation. So effective documentation enhances the visibility of quality system. Now, if you see the situation, though when we say about various good practices, still many are not following it properly. So many pharmaceutical industry have received warning letters from FDA because of this reason, because they are not being compliant with good documentation practices, not being compliant with 21 CFR Part 11, which you may not be knowing what is this 21 CFR Part 11. 21 CFR Part 11 is an FDA regulation which speak about regulation of electronic records and electronic signatures. So if any pharma industry is not following these guidelines properly, and because of that many of them got warning letters. So for example, in 2016, especially in India and China were the main target of FDA inspections. And 80% of FDA warning letters were issued in 2016 and had data integrity deficiencies. And in light of the past incidents, any FDA regulation that requires companies to maintain certain records and submit information to the agency as a part of complaints must follow GDP regulations such as GLP, GCP and CGMP. So whenever we say that we follow all these, surely the documentation is an essentiality. So good documentation practices ensures integrity of the data, reliability of the data. So data integrity is one of the thing which we can achieve through good documentation practice. In the pharma, as we say, there are different types of documents that is required, is it? When you say a drug development process, drug has to undergo a series of process to reach into the market. There is preclinical research, then there is clinical trials, then only at the end of the phase 3 of the clinical trial, only it will be reaching into the market. The phase 4, it will be reaching into the market actually. So when a drug is reaching into the market, during this process, all these documents we need to maintain. And also we will be following different types of good practices. During the preclinical, we will be following the good laboratory practices. During the clinical trial, the industry need to follow the good clinical practices. And during the manufacturing of drug, they need to follow the good manufacturing practices. And throughout all these practices, one of the common thing, one of the essentiality, what we can see is good documentation practices. And this is being taken from the website. This is the press release by the WHO, not WHO, I'm sorry, it is from the FDA. Yeah, this is a press release of FDA. It is a story, it is an incident, it is a tragedy with reference to one company, the New England Compounding Center. New England Compounding Center tragedy story is being highlighted here. It happened in recently, that is in 2012. Nearly 753 patients in US were diagnosed with fungal meningitis, where you can see that it is about fungal meningitis. Okay, around 753 patients were diagnosed with fungal meningitis. And how they got fungal meningitis? After receiving the injection. After receiving a steroid injection, they received this particular fungal meningitis. And that drug was nothing but the MPA, methyl pendinosolones was the drug what they have consumed. And this drug was being manufactured by the New England Compounding Center. And out of that 753 patients in US, nearly 64 patients died. And the reason when they analyzed, they identified that the drug, the steroid injection was not sterile. It failed to verify the sterilization process and importantly tested to ensure the sterility. So what they have done is they have improperly tested to ensure the sterility. So the testing was done, but it was improperly, and they falsely mentioned after the test that it is sterile. And the company owner, Mr. Chin, he intentionally marketed that drug and which contaminated with the fungus. So this kind of issues about the data misuse and the data integrity failures are a common still in the recent histories. So that is the importance of learning the good documentation practices. All the good practices we are learning, is it? During the corona pandemic situation also we have learning about the good hygienic practices. But how many of us are following is a question, is it? We are planning, we are practicing, we are learned about the good practices like hygiene practices. Immediately after going outside, you have to wash your hands. If possible, you have to change your dresses. And then also wearing the mask is one of the mandatory, one of the another good practice that we need to follow. Keeping social distance is another practice that we have to follow. All these we are actually aware about it, we are educated about it, but still how many follows is a question. The same thing is happening with our industries also. So by regulation now, FDA and all other regulatory bodies are trying to control such bad practices that is been happening. Now we will see the definition for two concepts, that is what is a document and what are records. So documents are nothing but the approved instructions which are either in paper or electronic form, which guides about how an activity shall be executed. So that is called a document. For example, you have a standard operating procedure. So that is a document. And through that document, it will be helping you how to perform a particular activity. And this document can be of two types. It can be either a paper or it can be an electronic. So whatever documentation we are going to talk now, it can be either in paper or either in electronic form. So the guidelines are of different. There are slight differences are there when you are maintaining, how you are maintaining the document. According to how you are maintaining the document, there are slight differences. The second is about the records. So records provides evidences that a particular activity have been performed and the results have been achieved. So records are an evidences for certain activities. For example, you are doing a QC, lab test you are doing. So for that you need to maintain a particular record. So records are often considered as a document also. They always documents the past. Records always documents the past. So two definitions we have seen. What are documents and what are records? And moving on to the another concept, that is the aim and purpose of good documentation. So the good documentation practices, where you will be seeing the two different types of abbreviations for good documentation practices. We normally use GDP, but GDP, one more good practice is there with the same abbreviation. That is nothing but good distribution practice. Is another abbreviation, GDP. And to avoid that confusion, in some literatures they uses DOCP, good docs practices, as good documentation practices. So GDP will, the aim of GDP to ensure globally accepted standards are being met in record keeping and reporting. And the GDP's standards related to some of the concept. One is data accuracy, or you can call it as the pillars. One is data accuracy. When we say data accuracy, it should be recorded accurately, cross-checked for errors, and not intentionally misleading. So these are the major highlights or major points we have to remember under data accuracy. When we say accurate, it should be recorded accurately, it should be checked for errors, and you have to ensure that it is not intentionally misleading. That means there is no kind of fraudulent entries or editable entries, etc. Then the second point is data integrity and validation. Data integrity and validation is the second point. So when we say data integrity, it is talking about the genuinity and a true data. And the validation. Validation is another thing. It should be validated and supported and witnessed. Is it? So if it is validated, if it is supported, or if it is witnessed, then what we can do, we can avoid that intentionality of falsified. There are situations like intentionally falsified data are being put, especially when we talk about clinical trial research. This is happening even in manufacturing, that we have seen, which led into the tragedy of fungal meningitis, is it? Yes. So moving on to the next one, it is about the reporting and reporting bar record keeping timelines. So when we say reporting and recording keeping timeline, a good document need to be recorded immediately after it happens, or if possible real time recording should be there, is it? So the information need to be recorded shortly after the event occurs, or a real time type of record keeping is required. For example, your instrument is working, so the parameters at which the instrument is worked can be on a real time basis. You can store it onto your computer, is it? So that is a advantage of electronic data. Online, I mean the what you say real time recording is possible in the case of an electronic data recording systems. And such kind of real time recording will be preventing the errors from memory issues and prevent the editing of original data. Otherwise, what will happen? You think that I'll write it later, and the later you will forget the actual values. If you are writing about the temperature fluctuations or a pH fluctuation, immediately after every particular time interval you are supposed to monitor it, and one day you forgot to enter it. You were busy with some other work and you forgot to enter the data. What will happen? Later when you are writing, actually you are using your memory. If your memory is little weak, what will happen automatically? You will be writing a falsified data there. Correct. Then comes the next point, that is the legibility. So legibility is another point, that is there should be a clarity and readable by anyone. So which should be removing any kind of guesswork from the data. And it should be traceable also. Traceability in the sense who recorded it. So it should be countersigned with your initials and signatures and the date, and which will be talking you about when it was being recorded, where it has been recorded, and how it has been recorded. So these three questions it will be answering if the record is a traceable. And some other aspect also you can add to this if you want. One is enduring. The document should be enduring, long lasting and durable. So if you are doing a paper entry, you have to write with a ball pen, not with an ink pen or not with a pencil, so that it will be more durable and you cannot do much kind of manipulations. And it should be accessible. The accession should be possible. It should be, the data should be easily available, easily retrievable. So these are the two more concepts, two more standards that you can add to the GDP pillars. And you can call it as the pillar of your good documentation. Now I'll be showing you two pictures about the documentation. So documentation, when we say documents, will be helping you to say that what is being made, is it? So from this picture, you may be able to guess what it is. Is it possible to guess what they are going to make? So most of us, when attempting a task, need some sort of documentation. Here a person is going to make something, is it? You can see the tools for making it, and you can see the half part of the progress of the work. But imagine he don't have a standard procedure to do it. So what will happen? Sometimes it will be end up like this. So the initial drawing, if it was wrong, ultimately what will happen? The entire time and their energy will be wasted. So this simple picture says everything about documentation, what is required, and if it is not followed, what will happen? It will be end up with a very wrong product. So a good data and record management practice, we call it as a GDRP. This we are following in various inspections that is happening with reference to the good practices. As I mentioned, when you say that your organization follows the good manufacturing practices, or when you say that your organization follows good clinical practices, GCP, good clinical practices, or good laboratory practices, GLP. These two concepts you are going to learn in two other modules. That is, in third unit you are going to deal about the GLP, and you will be also learning about the GCP. Okay, yeah. And I told all these documents, either you can prepare it in the form of a paper records or electronic records. So these are the two forms. So normally in a pharmaceutical company, either they will be maintaining it in the form of a paper or in the form of an electronics, or they may depend upon both the type of recording systems. And now the electronic signatures and electronic records are easier and easy to manage. So if you have a good software, SAP systems, SAPs, then you can manage it very easily. So electronic signatures and electronic records are easier compared to the paper. So you can see a transition from paper to the electronic. So in the case of paper, you require a long storage spaces, is it? Otherwise you may have to dump it somewhere. When you go to industries, in a storage area, if you go, you will be able to see such kind of situations where you can see that the documents are not being stored properly. So the data retrieval will be very difficult. But if it is in the form of an electronic document, the data retrieval will be very easy. It will be very easily accessible. So the accession will be very easy, so that you can do the data entry either in the form of a electronic notebook, or you can do it in the form of a collection forms. Now we are going to look into the various characteristics of a good document. So normally when you are preparing any good document, for example, in this side you will be able to see a standard operating procedure document. Whenever you prepare any kind of document, one essentiality is it requires a title. Is it? Through the title you should be able to say that this document belongs to what. And there should be an identification number. That is another essentiality. And it should be approved by an authorized person. The template what you are going to use, it should be approved by the authorized person. And normally it requires the due date of revision, the date of issues, and the list to whom it has been issued, and if it requires the signature. There should be a responsible person to maintain the document. Someone will be doing the data entry. Someone will be doing the reporting. So in that case, the responsible person's signature may be required. If it is done by 2 or 3 people, then all the responsible people may need to sign it. So their signature also may be a required essentiality of a good record. So if you see any record, by knowing these points, you should be now in a position to say whether it is a good document or a bad document. So if it is a good document, it requires a clear-cut title. Remember, title is required. It requires an identification number. Here you can see it has a title, it has an identification number, and the details about the approved, it should be approved by an authorized person, date of issues, and date of revision. If it is been revised, the revision date, and for each of the dates there should be signature from the authorized person, and the list of whom it has been issued. If the document is been issued for some purpose, that data also be required. And this talking about the good or in the case of good documentation, what are the different types of documentation you will be able to see. So when you say the good documentation practice, it encompasses practically all the aspect of pharmaceutical production. So there will be different types of documentation. You can put it in different headings. One is building, premises and equipments. So the details about the building, the details about the premises, equipments. So all the layout, everything is required here. About the installation, about the validation, about the cleaning and maintenance, about their layout. So these documents are required. About the personnel, the people who are working there, what kind of training they got, the details of training, that is another important document. And the hygiene practices, what they are following, the safety practices, what are being implemented about the person for the safety of the workers, that also is an essential document. Then about the materials, the different types of raw materials, and about all the different materials, there should be the details of about their specification, the testing details, the raw material testing details, the end product testing details, about the warehousing details, the document about the warehouse, if any rejection or disposal, if it is happening with reference to the raw material as well as with reference to the end product. So these data need to be maintained properly. Then the processing, the individual step in the processing manufacturing. The individual step in the process of manufacturing, we need to record it very clearly. Then the details about the finished goods. As I mentioned, their specification, their testing, storage, distribution. Even when you do the cold storage, any kind of storage what you are doing, that detail need to be mentioned clearly. The good storage practices, that is another practice, good practice. All these good practice we will be calling it as the GXPs, is it? The various GXPs are GXP, good practices. So another good practice is good storage practices. So when a good storage practice is being followed, for example, cold storage you have to do. You have a vaccine produced which need to be stored in a cold condition. So that detail also needed there. Then the distribution. When you do the distribution, you need to store document regarding the distribution. Then only the batch traceability will be easy. Then as I mentioned, if the finished products are also rejected or disposed, that detail also may be required. Then about the complaints and recalls. When you get a complaint, what kind of investigation you have done, what kind of actions you have taken, the methodology that you have used for the recalls, and the recalled products are being kept, should be kept in a quarantined area. So that details. And other documents what are required include the quality manual. A quality manual is required. The operational policies are required. The standard operating procedures are required. Batch manufacturing records, we call it as a BMR. Specification and testing procedures. What kind of testing procedures you have used? Specification procedures you have used. Usually the QC department will be responsible for that. Master formula and the instructions need to be maintained. Logbook, the various kinds of operations that you have done, various kind of maintenance that you have done, various kinds of calibrations that you have done. About that there should be a logbook. For an instrument, who all operated it. So all that detail are required with reference to any kind of instrumentation or equipment. And the other is the records. Records about the different types of activities which are being performed in the QC departments. Okay, in the form of reports you need to maintain it. Then stock control and distribution records. That also you need to maintain. Again, it will be coming under the records only. Stock control and distribution. So you can put the documents in various heads. And another which is not present out of this 15 are about the labels. Labels also can be considered as another documentation, is it? It also is a document. So different types of labels are required, which is talking about which area is being cleaned, which areas are not cleaned, is it? Or which areas are to be cleaned, or if the products are being kept or quarantined, the recalled product or rejected product, if it is quarantined, that should be labeled it is separately. So these kinds of informations are essentials. And labels for containers, labels for equipments, labels for premises, starting material, packing material labeling, intermediates labeling, bulk and finished product labeling. All this comes again under the labeling. So labels are also a type of document. So when you are preparing the labels, you know that label also should be speaking something, is it? It should speak lots of information. There should be a clarity when you are using labels. So this is a picture where you will be able to see about, it is an example of an SOP sheet. So you can see the different types of element which are being put here, where as many cases the titles are all in caps, it may be difficult to read. So when you are preparing a document, this also you can consider. That is why in textbooks normally they will not keep any headings in full bold, is it? So when it is full upper, not bold, I mean all in upper cases. If it is when it is in all upper cases, it will be difficult to read. But the different heads that you need to see under an SOP are, one is accountability of the document. Who is accountable for a particular document? That is required, the person in charge about that documentation. Then the traceability, the purpose, then the scope, then instructions. See, all those details are being required in an SOP. And this is another document. This is talking about the batch manufacturing instruction sheet. So that is another kind of document what you can see with the pharma batch manufacturing instruction sheet. And in the documentation, a visible example what you all are seen is about the product labeling, is it? This is a visible example what you all are seeing. When you talk about industry, many of you may not visited all the industry facilities, but surely you personally witnessed the labels that is being present on any drug product. So normally when you make a label, it should follow the national legislation, and normally it include the name of the drug. Whatever drug it is, its name is required. An active ingredient, the active pharmaceutical ingredient that is present and its quantity. Here you can see that the active pharmaceutical ingredient what is present and its ingredient is been present. Their batch number, normally this area what is printed in blue, you will be able to see the batch number as well as the expiry date. And storage condition also need to be storage condition, then the directions to use, and the name and address of the manufacturer. Name and address of the manufacturer, here you can see. The direction to use and the storage condition, here you will be able to see. The name and the active ingredient concentration, here you will be able to see. So this way, there should be very clear documentation with reference to the labeling of the finished product. But that will be varying from nation to nation based upon their legislative requirement. And all that records now, whatever we have discussed earlier, we can put it in different categories. And we can see here there are 4 different categories. One is primary records. So all that production formulas, supply source, about the details about the contracts. You may have taken a legal contract for supplying the raw materials, for supplying the active pharmaceutical ingredients, is it? You will have a third party contract where you need to make a legal agreement with the third party. So all that details about the packaging also, all that details we need to maintain it properly. Then procedures and supporting procedures like instructions and guideline book, any particular guidebooks or any particular instructions or any particular standard operating manuals, all these we can put it under this category. And you have the other two categories. One is subsidiary records. It like when you do the calibration or when you do any kind of reporting or all the printouts, whatever you are taking, may be falling under this category of subsidiary records. So that is another kind of record what you will be able to see, another category. And the last category is quality control records. Again, the testing reports, testing methods, what kind of recall procedures you have followed, any kind of investigation, whatever you have done, whether you have done any kind of self-inspections, that details, then corrective actions and preventive actions, whatever you have taken. All these maybe you can put it under this category of quality control records. So 4 categories of records you will be able to see. So moving on to the hierarchy of the documentation system, we have seen the different types of document, and it is, you should know the organization will have a hierarchical document system. It is mandatory as per the good documentation system. This is one of the essentiality, that is the organization should establish a hierarchical document system. And as per this hierarchical documentation system, the base is the batch records, the test method, the specification, validation and documentation. That is coming under the fourth one, base it is. But it is the first level, it will be about the quality manual. You need to have a quality manual that will be coming under the level 1. And you have to have a company policy that will be coming in the level 2. And the level 3 is the standard operating procedure. And as I mentioned, the base, the fourth level is the batch records, the test methods, the specification, then the validation of the document. All this will be falling under the fourth category of the hierarchical system. So this is the different levels. The first level is about the quality manual. The second one is about the the company policies. The third one is about the standard operating procedure, and the fourth one is batch records, the test methods and the specification and validation of the records, etc. Now this talk about the data integrity. So in FDA website, if you see, you can see that the FDA say about the 5 elements that we have to assure so that the data integrity will be there. Okay, there will be a data integrity. So which are those 5 elements that will be helping in protection of the data from unauthorized and unaccountable changes? One is, it should be attributable. It should be attributable. What do you mean by attributable? Attributable is nothing but there should be a person who is in charge, or we can say that a responsible person should be there when a document is being maintained, when a document is being prepared and maintained. That is called attributable. So there should be a responsible person who has done the counter signing. So when you sign, it means that you have done it, is it? When you have done it, or when something is done in your present, then you are signing. So it should be attributable. Then the next one is legibility of the data. That means there should be a clarity. It should be readable by anyone. There should not be any chance of guessing it, is it? When you write certain numbers, like 7, when you write, it should not be in a position to guess it as 7. Sometimes it may look like 9, is it? It may look like, or it may look like 4 also. So such kind of guesswork you have to remove. So it should be contemporaneous. That means recorded immediately after it has been happened. Or you can say that you have a real time of recording it. Is it? If you have a real time of recording it, then the chance of the falsification you can avoid. And the data should be of original. There should be originality for the data. And the last point is it should be accurate. So Alcoa is a strategy put forward by FDA to ensure the data integrity in good documentation practices. So this principle you have to remember. This is an FDA principle to ensure the data integrity in the case of pharmaceutical process. How we can ensure the data integrity? For ensure the data integrity, the record should be maintained properly. So if you are maintaining a paper document, what are the points you have to consider? That is what been summarized in this slide. You can take a bound notebook which are pre-numbered, or even you can use a loose sheet. But what you have to do is you have to do the numbering, and then you need to do some of the entries. So every register form shall have a format, a control number should be there, a particular identifiable number should be there. There should be a header, as I mentioned previously, date of opening when that record is being opened, date of closing, table of content wherever it is applicable. So these points you have to follow when you are opening a particular record. So normally when people go for inspections, if the books are pre-numbered, if you have a notebook and if it is pre-numbered, if you are tearing any pages and if you make some kind of data adjustments, then easily it can be caught, is it? Yeah. Then here we are talking about the electronic data. The data must not be able to be altered or erased when it is entered or recorded, isn't it? You should not make any kind of alteration, or you should not erase it once it is entered or documented. That is more possible when you have an electronic method of documentation. So you can record the data electronically. So electronic data processing systems are available, through that you can record. Or sometimes we may be using the photography as a method to ensure the data integrity. You can take the photography, a live photography, you can take and you can put it. Or any other reliable methods are available, that also you can imply according to the regulatory requirements. And when you make any kind of entry, or you have a data entry software, is who can enter the data and who can make the changes? Only authorized persons. Only authorized person should be able to enter the data and modify the data. How you can achieve that? If you have a particular username and password which is being given, then easily you can control the security, is a data security you can achieve. Like in your mobile phone, to prevent the unauthorized access, what you will do, you will be putting the password, is it, or pin you will be putting. So through which you can prevent it. Passwords are more stronger than pin, is it? Yeah. So when you have to enter the data, enter a complete and accurate information at the time the work is performed. So it should be real time. So real time entry, if it is possible, that you have to make. Enter the signature or initials according to the procedure, whatever is required, that you have to put. If both the signature and initials are required, in those areas you can do that, both the things. Or if when more than one persons are involved in a task, then surely all the people must sign. So these are some of the good practices that you have to follow when you are maintaining any documents. And remember, why I have highlighted never sign is, never sign your name for performance of a job for work actually performed by someone else. If you do that, what you are saying, I have done and I am responsible. If anything goes wrong, then you are answerable. If somebody else might have done it and you have countersigned it, then you are the responsible person in future, because the record will be kept for at least 1 to 5 year duration. So in between this time, if anything goes wrong, if any product in the market shows any adverse reactions, and they identifies that because of a particular process it is happened, and you are in charge and you have signed it, then you are responsible for that. Limit the use of abbreviations and acronym when you are preparing a document. So limit abbreviations and acronym in the document. These are some of the things that you have to consider. And this point I told you already, to avoid the re-entries, to avoid the corrections and re-entries, use ball pen or black point pens. Don't use gel pens or ink pens or pencils, and even avoid using different colored pens. Okay. Yeah. And in the document, the spaces and cell cannot be left blank. Wherever there is nothing to enter, you put not applicable. Don't keep it empty. Don't keep it blank. Any document, never keep it blank. Or never use dittos. There is a habit, is it? To make it easy, we will put dittos. That is not a good practice in the documentation. Or putting arrows. Okay. These are all not good practices. You can see these are all not good practices in a good documentation. Putting arrows or dittos, etc. are not a good practice. If you have any corrections to make, this image talks about if you have any corrections to make, what is the best procedures. To make any corrections, don't use the correction liquid or a tap or any other materials. Do not overwrite also. Here you can see that it has been overwritten. Some number they are supposed to change it. It should be actually 2136. So that should not be there. Here also you can see that some number, it was 1 or something, they have changed it into 2. That is also not a good correct. But this is a good practice. What they have to do, strike it once. You have the actual number was 2136. 2136 is a wrong entry, or so they have done a single strike. Then they have written it separately, 2136. Next to it, either above it or left or right hand side of it, they have written, and then it is countersigned. Signature with the date and initial is there. So this is a good practice. What you can see here in the bottom is a good practice. And do not use overrides. As I mentioned, correcting 6 to 9 or 9 to 8. It may be easy, is it? You might have done it. but don't do it when you are making it in the form of a document. If you have done it, it is not acceptable. So this slide talk about some of the living examples that we normally make. For example, as I told, when we make a mistake, we are supposed to write 485, and by mistake we are written it as 475. Immediately we won't be doing a single strike, we will be doing all the zigzag, is it, all that activities we will do, so that others won't be able to identify it. But this is not a good practice. Mistakes, anytime it happens, but how correctly you justify it, that is important. So whenever any error, if it is happened, what you have to do is draw a single line through that error, make the corrections next to the error, either above or below or on sidewise, you make the correction, and write the explanation for that error. It may be some error will be the recording error, some error will be there. For example, if it is a recording error, you write it as a recording error. That is the explanation. And sign and date the correction. Is it? Your name and the signature you need to write. Name and date. This is few other examples. As I mentioned, overwriting you need to avoid. Instead of, this is a wrong practice. Overwriting is a wrong practice. In training, we need to explain all those things. We are talking about the good practices that we are supposed to follow. So this is a wrong entry. As per the previous slide, we have learned what you are supposed to do. Make a single strike, is it? And then write the correct numeric or whatever data you want to enter that you do. Then you need to put the signature. So normally the correction should be countersigned. Correction should be countersigned. Here you can see it is signed. It is supposed to be 100 point. Some few digits are there, 2, 3. There should be a signature with date is required. This is a correct method. So what you are not supposed to do, do's and do nots, you will be able to see here. Here also you will be able to see the do's and do nots. That is what here we are going to see. This is about again some digits are being overwritten here. You can see clearly, you can identify this number was 1 and they made it to 5. This was 0 or some other letter, it was been made into 9. And here also this was 1 and it was been made into 0. Because from the handwriting you can see this very clearly, is it? And another one you can see it was some other number, it was been made into 8. It was 00, it was been made into, or 03 it was made into 08. This was 4 and tried to made into 5. This was 5 and made it to some other number, 6 or 8 or something. It was 6 and tried to made into 8. So you have seen something interesting regarding the digit overwrites. The slide clearly explains the do nots about the overwriting. Here it is talking about a good practice regarding in case of errors. You have identified certain errors in entering. The actual value, it should be 15.13. So what you do is you make a round it, make a circle, then you are putting a cross line, and then you are writing the values next to it, and you are doing the countersigning, is it? You are putting it with the date and signing, recorded by whom, recorded date, and it is been the signed, the authorized person signed. Wherever corrections are made, it is also been signed. Here you can see that it is been signed by 2 people. So whoever has made the corrections, here this entry was made by XYZ. So after making the correction, that same person has done the countersigning. Similarly here also, that should be a good practice what we need to follow. Whoever has made the entry only they can do the correction also. This is another picture which is talking about the do's and do nots. You are not supposed to enter. Here you can see there are lots of blank spaces. What they have done is they have used a double bracket to save the time. Not possible. Here you can see the detours are being used. Not a good practice. Here is another attempt where they have tried to fill all the data regarding the temperature, and with pH they have written, what they have written is not applicable. It is again not a good practice. What they have to write is every column they were supposed to write the not applicable, but they have used a square bracket here. And this is another slide, another area where it is talking about the labeling of the reagent bottles. Here the labels are not clear, not visible. Some crude numbers they have used. Not a good practice. Here a proper label is there. Proper label with name, date of preparation, expiry, shelf life, everything is there. But here it is missing. Many times with our handwriting, we will end up with such kind of confusions, is it? You have written a particular number, but after 1 month or after 2 months, why you are speaking about months, after an hour itself, is it? We won't be in a position to read what we have written. Can you guess what it is? 27 or 29 or 24, or is it a percentage, 2%? What we do now in such situations is a complicated case. So when you are writing, write it properly. The data entry should be very accurate. So normally the data maintenance is an important process. The documents need to be maintained as required under the local rules, and it shall be, normally we need to maintain all the document very meticulously, and it should be regularly reviewed and kept up to date. That means you need to have a proper document control system. And I told previously, depending upon the regulatory requirement, either for 1 year or up to 5 years, some document you may have to preserve. And as a closing statement, we can say this about the good document. That is, a good documentation is the cornerstone of GMP compliance. So good documentation is the cornerstone of GMP compliance. So if you want to read further about the good documentation, please go through these references. Good documentation practice. It's by the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. This document you can read from Indian scenario. You can read part 11, that is the CGMP part 11. You can read CFR part 11. You can read for the electronic record and the electronic signature, scope and applications. And you can also read about this particular document for any further details. I have certain interesting works for you which you can do it. You have 3 questions I have put here. So maybe even I will be uploading the PPT. So from the PPT also you will be able to see the questions. You will be able to see it correctly. In the video you will not be getting the correct time to it. So please, after watching the video, I will be uploading the study material. So in the study material, go to the end of my presentation. You will be able to see these 3 questions. Question number 1, it is a particular lab report. So you just read all the areas and you see whether this documentation followed good practice or not. So your assignment here is, it is not an assignment, it's a worksheet I am giving you at the end. So normally a training requires a practical exposure. So it is a kind of practical worksheet. What you need to do is go through the worksheet and you need to identify whether they have followed a good practice here for documentation. Now by this you have learned what are do's and do nots in documenting. So whether they have followed the do's in the documentation, that you have to see. And this is a second question, where you have to see that the picture summarizes about a particular work that they have done, and by looking into the picture you need to say whether it is a good documentation procedure, whether it is followed or not. Here also you can see another kind of document. You need to say about whether they followed good documentation or not. So this is a particular slide, a cartoon, what I got it from internet, unknown source I received it. A very good cartoon. The husband is telling to the wife, I swear honey, I only cooked it for 3 hours. Is it? Then it is talking about the need of good documentation. You see, I'm going to need to see all ESI form, the O1, including the metadata. Metadata talk about the different types of data related to the production. Is it? So very interesting cartoon. Thank you for your attention. I have put my email as well as my WhatsApp. I heard few students were having any queries. They were worried how to communicate with the faculty members. So I have put my email address as well as the WhatsApp number here. So if you have any kind of queries regarding the presentation, you can ask. And I also suggest you to post your doubts in the form of questions on the chat boxes which is available. Please make use of it. We are always available to answer your questions. So make it more interactive. Otherwise it will be like one side. Thus logic of online teaching by videos has implemented, because going live it will be difficult, because nearly 350 students are there in the certificate course, and we don't have any online platform to accommodate all the 350. Maximum is 200, up to 200 we can accommodate. That is one difficulty. And secondly, to make all available at a particular time, it will be difficult. Many have the internet connectivity issues, so whenever they are coming in network area, they can download the videos and they can view it. So that was the intention why we put this method in our certificate course. Hope you will cooperate, you will enjoy it. So see you